We are with Andrew here. Andrew Winston, he is one of the best specialists in sustainability. He wrote a book, and this book is called Green to Gold, which was translated in 7 languages. And that time when he wrote that book, he was one of the first on this hot topic, and this book became very popular. Now he wrote another book, The Big Pivot, and many magazines advise it to read it for the managers because they consider this book to be precious. Andrew, I'm very happy to see you. You came in time. Thank you so much. And really,
Good to
you
be
look
here.
very elegant. I cannot
Thank
not
you.
to our audience.
Thank you so much.
Andrew, my pleasure. You told that for big companies and for huge companies, they can navigate and get profit from biggest challenges, what are happening now in the world. For me, as a person who is calm and who don't like challenges and who doesn't like risk, I know all people say we should like challenges, we should like risk. For me, no, I like simple comfort life where I can enjoy, drink champagne, eat chocolate, and be happy. The risk and change, it's really very turbulent. It's very difficult. But you said big companies and we as humanity, we should take that time to do something. Can you explain, please? What are you meaning?
Well, I mean, look, everybody likes to sit and have some champagne and chocolate at times, but the real world, it has a way of showing up on your doorstep, whether you want it to or not. And the world is facing some really big challenges. It's, that are not really optional. We don't really have a choice about addressing them. Things like the pandemic, obviously, like there's no choice but to deal with it. But the larger kind of even bigger and longer term problems are things like climate change. That's really the biggest change and issue that humanity faces, and it really threatens our way of life and our well-being. And down to little things like chocolate crops. So for your chocolate, cocoa crops are affected by changing weather, right? It affects all of us, no matter where we are, with cities that are facing higher ocean sea levels all over the world, new levels of floods, storms, droughts, fires. The world is in danger, and big companies are feeling that directly. They're feeling it as a cost to their business as some of their assets are damaged, their supply chains are affected, and they are finding ways to profit from helping to solve these problems by using renewable energy, which is now cheaper, by getting much more efficient, by helping their customers be more efficient and help their customers become lower carbon. All of that is good for business. And there's other big issues like inequality that companies, racial and gender and income inequality that companies are working on and addressing directly. So I don't think we have a choice. And the companies that do this the best and kind of most proactively, that take the lead, are going to do very well and are going to profit.
What do you think is possible to do? You said it's possible to use low carbon. For us, for example, we sell Renault, but in Kazakhstan, still there are no electrical cars and there is no place to recharge the cars. And it is unfortunately, one of the dirtiest places in the world because it's located down in the mountains and all the dirty air is going inside. That's why there is a lot of asthma and bronchitis and everything. Besides that, what to do for these companies? What do you think?
I mean, look, the places in the world like you're describing that are heavy with pollution, some of that's local, but some of it is global, right? You get pollution coming from other countries, and climate change is global. So everything that's happening around the world to move to electric vehicles, and that's happening pretty quickly now, and to renewables, it will help everyone. It will help Kazakhstan. It will help the people living in dirty cities all over the world. And as those technologies get cheaper, they will come into every corner of the world. And you're seeing, even, I know a lot of the audience is listening in from the Emirates and from the Middle East. You're seeing even, the UAE investing in future technologies, realizing that it won't be about oil forever, that there are going to be new technologies coming, and they're coming very fast. So I think, individual companies are saving a lot of money. They're cutting their energy use. They're moving to renewables. And they're working with their suppliers and their customers to make these changes even bigger. You can look to the big technology companies like Microsoft or Google, and they are buying a lot of renewable energy, and they have plans to eliminate carbon from their entire operation and they're heading there pretty fast. So the world is changing, and I think companies have to adopt the best practices like they always do with technology or quality. There's been movements in business for years that change the way we do things, and this is another one.
Do you think, as households, as the owners of small and medium businesses, as the owners of the families, should we also change our mind? Should we also teach our kids differently? Because my kids, who are only twins, who are 5 years old, they, for example, don't like to use small plastic bottles because they believe when we use small plastic bottles, it's not good for the turtles and oceans. That's why we are using only huge bottles. So I think in this way, they're more proactive than me even. So what do you think, what we can change if we are not Coca-Cola, not Microsoft, not Google, but if we are much smaller, what we can do then?
Well, the way you described your kids, I have two teenagers, and they are Gen Z, and they are a very aware generation about climate change and pollution and the social inequalities, and they really demand more. Some of those, the younger generation, they're starting to enter the workforce, and they're demanding more of the companies that they work for and buy from. They're very public about what they want. The surveys are clear that they believe companies should do more, and that applies to all companies of all sizes. So a lot of what makes a company more sustainable, or what we're calling in my new book, Net Positive. You mentioned the big pivot, but I have a new book out, Net Positive, that's about having a positive impact on the world. Small and medium companies can do almost everything the large can. They can cut costs, they can save money, they can innovate. And I think often they can think longer term. If they're family run, if they're not, waiting to see what shareholders want because they don't have public shareholders, they can often think longer term about their business and be more innovative. I think a lot of the innovation in the world comes from the smaller businesses. The big ones will help accelerate those technologies or help the smaller ones get bigger. But often it's the small and medium that do the most new thinking and come up with new ideas and new ways to do business.
Andrew, you talk about inequality, social inequality. What are you meaning by this?
Well, there's always been a gap between rich and poor, and that's part of our economy. It's always has been. It's been certainly part of capitalism. But there's been a kind of increase in this inequality in the last 40, 50 years. Almost all the wealth and income gain of the last few decades has gone to the very tiny percentage, the 1%.
Maybe 4-5% of the people.
Yes. Oh, much less, even 1% or 0.1%. And what that's meant is really flat wages for most people. And so not really an improvement in well-being for a huge portion of humanity. And I think that just creates tension in society when you see a very small number getting everything. And it's not that anybody wants people not to be wealthy or to do well, but it's really about, does everybody do well? Does everybody get improved well-being and quality of life? And there's so much more awareness of this now in companies, and about, racial inequality. It's a big issue in the US, but it applies all over the world. And gender inequality, right? Women make less than men for the same jobs in almost anywhere in the world. They don't have the same rights in many parts of the world, as you know. And I think that's tough for multinational businesses that have a set of values and have women in executive positions. It's difficult for them to have different standards and values in different parts of the world. So I think there's a pressure to kind of raise up and reduce that inequality.
Do you think that the countries, the huge companies, becoming like the small governments, like small countries, maybe they can even do better than the presidents of big companies, because these presidents, like USA, so much involved in the elections. We saw this that was going between Biden and Trump for a long time, and it was I didn't think that there is a lot of time to do. There is a lot of time that is wasted on politics.
Yeah.
It's not on these things that you're talking. The same what's going on in Russia now, you also mentioned it. So don't you think that people from the lower positions and even companies can do more than governments at the moment?
Well, I think to solve the really big problems in the world, we do need everyone. And I think the idea of waiting for government to do it alone, that won't happen. As you say, there's a lot of distractions, and politicians are always running for office, and there's a lot of corruption, right? And so they may not do what's right on something like climate change. But we need government, right? They set policy, they set prices on things, but it needs to be deep partnerships. A lot of the theme of my book Net Positive is about partnerships, about government working with business and with NGOs and civil society to solve problems together. But I mean, you're right. The government is beholden to a lot of different things, or they're the people running for office are, in my country, they're raising money all the time to run for office. That keeps them from actually, legislating or governing. There's so much focus on just getting reelected. And so it is, we can't rely just on government. We have to kind of demand more of our government and on the businesses we work for. And that's, I think, where citizens and employees come in. They are increasingly pushing the businesses they work for and the governments of their regions and countries to do more. You saw that at the global climate meeting a few weeks ago in Glasgow, Scotland. There were huge youth protests led by, Greta Thunberg from Sweden, basically saying this isn't good enough. You got to do more. And they're loud and they're organized, and I don't think they're going to go away.
Do you think Greta, she is a positive example of this, how young generation is involved and how a young girl can do a lot, not being a government, or you think she's kind of being used or misused her name? What is your personal opinion on that?
I don't think she's being misused. I mean, she's saying exactly what she wants to and always has. I don't think there's anybody writing for her. I mean, I think if you see her, it's coming from the heart. And we need voices like that, right? There's always been more aggressive voices that are putting out there kind of a really hard truth. Organizations like Greenpeace go around the world pushing companies and countries to do better. And you need that pressure so that organizations move in the right direction and kind of sometimes can work with those that aren't as loud or aren't pushing as hard, but you need those voices out publicly to kind of rally people. So I think she's done an amazing thing to get millions of kids, teens, to get engaged. And as they, become old enough to vote and then to, work, they're going to have a real impact. So I think she's done something, pretty amazing.
You start talking about it, Andrew, when these topics were not popular. You were in a way before, and you, somehow you were one of the first. How you, in a way, you predicted it, because now everybody start talking on that, and some scientists saying it's already too late, that we did such a damage to the nature, to the soil, to the oceans, to the water, to the air, that this damage is drastically, it's very big. What are you thinking? Why you start talking so early, and are we not late to do something?
Well, I started early. I guess I have mentors and people I look up to and read their books 20 years ago that have been doing this for 30, 40 years. So there's been people before me, but for business people, people coming from a business background, I was pretty early and had one of the earlier books on this topic. For me, it was just kind of logic. I just looked at the world and saw the use of resources. I wasn't really coming at this as a pure environmentalist. It wasn't just, I want trees to be healthy. I mean, I do, but it was really just practical, that I saw that our system was using up resources and damaging the climate, faster than we could heal it. And that just, if you just kind of look forward, that can't continue. So to me, it was just a logical thing to try to work on these problems and make business more part of the solution, have business help solve the world's problems rather than contribute to them. Now, is it too late? Look, we waited too long on climate. So there's no one answer to that. There's parts of the world that are going to be heavily damaged. We've already lost, a good percentage of species. That will continue. We are damaging the natural world. It's not going to be as rich a world as it was. And there will be parts of the world where it's underwater, cities that really can't thrive. There'll be parts of the Middle East that I think will be too hot to live in many days of the year, like actually too hot to survive if you're not in air conditioning. So that affects, can people work outside? Can they get around? This is all coming. But every step of the fight matters so that it's not more of the world that is damaged in this way. And so the fight for 2030 to cut emissions, carbon emissions in half is really critical, because what the scientists tell us is if we don't cut emissions that fast, things will get much worse. And I think it's already bad enough, and we need to stop the worst from happening.
Andrew, as my last question to you, what do you consider as your biggest achievement at the moment? What you think you did, and you will say, Olga, I'm very proud of that. That's what I did is important for me, and I think, and for humanity, and I think I did. What you did?
That's a good question. I think I feel proud of being one of the people, as you said, pretty early, and getting the message out to business that they can be better, they can do better, and not focus solely on shareholders and short-term profits, and think bigger, think longer term about the value they create for the world. I've had an influence on that, and I've seen companies and clients, do specific things like buy a lot of renewable energy and improve the world. But often for me, it's kind of at the micro level. I have people that have come up to me regularly for 15 years that say, I read your book and it changed the direction of my life. I decided to go work on these issues. Or a lot of people have read it in school, in MBA programs or undergrad, and it changed their direction. They chose jobs or careers based on things that I wrote. So that's always the most rewarding, really, is it's hard to know what you've done for the really big stuff in the world. But when someone comes up and says, my world has changed and my life is different, that's an incredibly rewarding experience.
I agree with you. It's incredibly rewarding. It's incredible to know. And I think also the mood of the people who work for corporations who take care about that is also changing. I mean, mental health. And because when you know that your work is helping somebody, is also very rewarding.
That's true.
That's it. Thank you so much. I was very happy to see you. Thank you for being with us with Hidden Hero. It was a big pleasure. And I hope that